I think Bevan French is the best player that I've ever seen play Super League. You could throw in there Jamie Peacock, Paul Sculthorpe, Danny Maguire, Jamie Lyon,
Andy Farrell.
There's loads, right? But I'm talking about through my own perspective. A player who gets my backside out of a chair. Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Back 10 studio here for All Out Rugby League's Back 10 podcast. I am your host, Kyle Amor, and this week is the week that we've all been waiting for as Rugby League fans. It is, of course, the build-up to the grand final, and joining me this week, I'm delighted to say our guest list just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's none other than four-time Super League grand final winner, Leon Pryce. Leon, how are you?
Good, Kyle, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And as always, joined by the one and only Matt Shaw. Matt, how you been?
Very well. Busy time of year for everyone, isn't it? But an exciting time of year. I don't think I'll get much sleep this week, but we'll get a good game at the end of it. So let's bring it on.
Well, we certainly are all excited, Matt, ahead of this week's grand final. Don't forget, we want to hear from you guys at home in the comments, as you do each and every week. If you're watching from a mobile phone or a tablet, down by the comments, swipe left and that'll reveal that hype button. Make sure you hit that hype button so we can reach much wider audiences and keep delivering the quality content that you guys love at home. You can hit that hype button 3 times per week. And again, it will help us all here at All Our Rugby League. But for now, let's dive into this week's show. So before we touch upon the grand final, let's talk about what happened this week. Ahead of the semi-finals, of course, and a rather bizarre event that unfolded, Matt, on when was it Wednesday night? That statement from the Wigan Warriors and Derek Beaumont. What was he thinking?
Yeah, I don't know. It just wasn't a good look for anyone, was it? It's just, you know, when sometimes think Rugby League has always hit like a peak of nonsense, and somehow it goes again. A semi-final being under doubt because of ticketing. And listen, what I'll say is for Derek Beaumont, I understand his frustration. I understood why he felt aggrieved, but at the same time, it wasn't hundreds and hundreds of people. It was a small number of people, and it wasn't. Wigan really had just followed the procedures. It was just one of those things.
Well, look, they say no news. They say any news is good news, right? And in the world of rugby league, look, Leon, it made national headlines. It made on BBC Sport. It was on mainstream media, for goodness sake. You know, what do you think of the work that Derek Beaumont's done at the Lee Leopards? Of course, this is a latest episode in some. He's very Marmite, isn't he? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
He's very Marmite. I actually take a look at it. I think he's done wonders for the game in terms of what he's been able to bring, but there is sometimes he just pushes the envelope a bit too much, doesn't he?
No, I enjoy Derek's comments. I mean, he's a polarising figure. You know, like you say, a little bit Marmite, some like him, some won't, but he definitely brings attention and news to the game, which is sometimes needed. You know, not always positive, but it's in the news. And let's not forget, he's done wonders for that club.
Yeah.
The rebranding of the club, you know, he's got them to a Challenge Cup final, which they won. He's invested millions and millions of pounds into his team and his club. So, yeah, he's a little bit controversial, but on the whole, everything he's contributed to that club and that town has been positive.
Yeah, look, you have to respect the man that spends his own money, and with doing so, you know, he's able to sort of, I suppose, dare I say, not say what he wants, but he's very vibrant, isn't he? He is.
The responsibility to the game at times, though, not to bring it negative light. And for Derek does some brilliant things. Look at the atmosphere at Lee. Look at, you know, you can single this and boil this down to look at the transformation of Lee under Derek Beaumont. Yeah. And they've become one of the top teams in the competition with a brilliant pre-match and just a whole game day experience. The crowds have shot up. He's done fantastic things. At times just needs to pull it in. What I will say, Cal, and I think this is the bigger picture that people are missing, I think the statement released by Wigan was an insight into the very, very hostile political rugby league world at the minute. There is a lot going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of animosity towards Wigan. We've seen that play out a little bit on the show. You know, Chris Radlins came on and explained with the 14 teams and why they didn't vote. They abstained. Matt Ellis then came on and said, you know, disagreed in parts. There's much more at play here. I think, if I'm honest, I think Wigan saw an opportunity to maybe make an example of Derek Beaumont. Not that they were wrong to do so, because I think the way he was conducting himself wasn't quite right. But I think they saw an opportunity there, and I think we're seeing the bad blood that's behind the scenes come out into the public domain there.
Well, maybe a war on words off the field between those two clubs, but let's talk about what happened on the field. Speaking of field, Jay Field, player of the match performance. That tackle that Jay Field produced on Owen Trout was massive. He does a very similar one in the World Club Challenge, if we cast our mind back on
Tailored made.
You know, it was interesting listening to Sam Tompkins after the game, you know, because he spoke about the development of Jay Field and how he's become much more of an all-round fullback, Leon, rather than just a runner. Do you see that in his game as well?
Yeah, I think for any fullback, I mean, fullback now has become the most dominant position where your star player plays. Back in the day, it used to be probably a 7 or a 6, but it is the key position now. And I think for any fullback that wants to go to world-class level and go to the level that teams need, it's okay being able to attack, but you've got to be able to defend. You've got to be able to make try savers. You've got to stop the other team from scoring. You saw it this week in the grand final in NRL with Walsh taking his game to a level that produced the win. You know, without Walsh making 2 try-saving tackles, they don't win that game. So, yeah, any good fullback that wants to be known as regarded as the best, you look at Chris Radlinski, Paul Wellens, unbelievable attackers, but they were unbelievable defenders. They saved you as many tries as they scored, and I think that's probably just as important to any team is to stop the tries.
But the game in itself, Leon, if we look back at it, Lee were. You know, I was sat at home watching that thinking, Lee are winning this. Like, although they were behind on the scoreboard, that try at half-time obviously was a hammer blow. But even at 8-6, I thought to myself, if I was Lee, I'd be happy because they were winning the field position. They were, for my opinion, they were on top of the Wigan pack. However, we have seen time after time after time and again that Wigan, they only need 1 or 2 moments and boy, do they make you pay.
The reason why Wigan are the best team in the comp is because they have that X factor in French and Field that no other team has. I don't think they're good at the grind, they're good at the physical, but I don't think they're necessarily better than others at it. But they have Field and French, and they need 1 moment and they score. And we saw exactly that play out in the 40th minute of that game. And that was where the game was won and lost. Exactly the same as the grand final. When Bevan skips inside Mikey Lewis, rounds Niall Levels, that won the game. That is simply the difference which sets Wigan apart for me.
Well, speaking of Bevan French, I just want to get you guys at home involved as well. I threw a tweet out there on Friday night, and basically, Leon, in my opinion, it'd be really interesting to get your take on this. I think Bevan French is the best player that I've ever seen play Super League. And the reason why I say that, it's you know, you look at what he's done, you look at his appearances to his tries, you look at they're on the cusp of winning 3 grand finals in a row. They won everything last year. He was the man of the match in the grand final, the Challenge Cup final, and the World Club Challenge. And when I say the best that I've ever seen, look, you could throw in there Jamie Peacock, Paul Sculthorpe, Danny Maguire, Jamie Lyon,
Andy Farrell.
There's loads, right? But I'm talking about through my own perspective, a player who gets my backside out of a chair. When I watch him, I see something incredibly special. Leon, I just want to ask you, look, I understand that you'll probably echo that in terms of saying Bevan French is a special player, but who's your all-time great Super League player for you?
For me, there's too many to mention, like you said before. And if I were going to talk, I'd probably go back to my era. But I know the most talented player I ever saw was Jamie Lyon. That's without a shadow of a doubt. For 2 seasons, I think he got Man of Steel in 2005, was it? And 2006 to get it.
I'm not sure.
I might be 2004.
He won one of the two.
Yeah. So, and I played with him in 2006, my first season for Saints, and he was just freakish. He could do things that I'd never seen players do with his hands and speed. It was just unbelievable. Probably, he wasn't even coming into his prime when he played for Saints. So for me, that's probably the most gifted player I've ever seen in Super League. But yeah, it's exciting players, and players are different, aren't they? Sculthorpe, Farrell. You can't touch those players for toughness and how they led the team and doing it on a Great Britain level as well, not just for club level. Those players could transfer it onto the international scene. I've seen Scully terrorise the Australians for Great Britain. I've seen Faz lead a Great Britain team and steamroll Australia. So not just in Super League, being able to transfer it onto international scene. For me, that's what sets people apart.
Well, we want to get your comments on that below. Do let us know who your favourite Super League player of all time is. For me, I'm going Bevan French. For Leon, it's Jamie Lyon. Matt, just to get your little take on this.
So subjective, isn't it?
Because of course it is. You can't compare generations, can you? No. Almost. It's very difficult.
Because some people will go, well, the greatest player to ever play in Super League is Andrew Johns, but he wasn't around long. Do you do it on talent? Do you do it on history? Do you do it on longevity in the competition, impact on the competition? There's so many factors. The one that I always come back to, and I can't give you a particular reason why, I always think Andy Farrell. I just thought he was a complete player.
He was a freak.
Could do everything.
It was a joke.
What was it like playing with him, Leon?
I was a bit old school, a little bit of a hierarchy back in those days. I was a kid, and we had some tussles, Bradford and Wigan, so I was a little bit under the pecking order of Faz. I think most people were. He was very much the general, but he led. He was a leader. He was a special player, athlete, human. Like he was one in a generation. Toughness. He led the team. You don't see players like that very often nowadays. Probably the closest we got to was Scully at the same time. But Faz was unbelievable, and it's just the right call. Anybody who says that he was the best player they've ever seen in Super League is, it's your opinion, but you can't argue with it. 100% is one in a generation player.
Well, your opinion, it certainly is. Do let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can see everything and keep up to date with everything that's here at Back 10 and across All Out Rugby League as well. Now, touching upon the other semi-final, Hull KR and St Helens. We saw the week earlier Chris Kendall being at the centre of that John Bennison try, no try. Liam Moore. Now look, for those listening at home, whilst I still say that St Helens don't go on and win that game, there was a couple of iffy calls from Liam Moore at the start, wasn't there? Particularly that first try.
It was a forward pass, wasn't it?
By a mile.
It was a forward pass. There's no... Look, I'm complete with you. I
don't think it changes the outcome of the game.
It was the most one-sided 12-0 halftime scoreline I've seen in a long time. Like, Hull KR just dominated them. Field position, territory. Saints never had a sniff. But it was a forward pass. And even the Gildart to Burgess one, there was it's so hard because what people forget when you watch it on TV, the angles can be deceptive. They can be deceptive, but I don't think there was any doubt over the first one. That was a forward pass.
Leon, you've probably seen enough of Saints, but a good mate of Paul Wallens as well. What have you made of St Helens this year?
Probably echoing what probably a lot of people have said is the recruitment's probably not worked. It's a new generation of players coming through. We've got a few good younger players coming through, but I think you saw it evident on Friday night, was it the kicking game? I mean, they ran the ball on the fifth tackle maybe 4 times. They got tackled with the ball, got no field position. And that's not game management in a semi-final rugby game, a playoff game. The Saints have been known in the past, kick, play 4, get down, chase, win field position. To get caught on play 5, I think 3 times and not kick the ball or to turn it over in your own half, it's just so and you can come up with this is a wrong call, this was a forward pass, but that first half was so poor in terms of game management. And, you've really got to look at yourselves and they still were only 12 points behind and then came back. So to play so poor in the first half of a semi-final, but just 12-0 down against a dominant Hull KR team who were really hard to beat at their home ground, shows you they can still come up with good performances.
Well, you mentioned the word dominant, and you have to echo that really, despite sort of that closer scoreline. A word on Old KR, who I was sat here 7 days earlier, and and said that there was an opportunity for Saints. It's a semi-final. Look, every scenario in rugby league, as ludicrous as it may seem, is always possible, right? But I question whether Hull KR were wobbling. They're not wobbling. They're ready to go on to a final now, aren't they?
That first half was Hull KR as we know them, wasn't it? That was them intense, smothering the life out of Saints. Just had the foot on the throat and never really let off, other than probably scoring more points. They're just a good team. We've seen that game play out so many times with Hull KR, haven't we? They don't try and force points early on. They're more than happy just to run it into the corner and make you come out, wait for your error. Bang. They played really well. They've got a bit of strike. I thought Hiku looked re-energised and back to more like his best. I think the big one for them is Ollie Gildart. He was really good at the start of the year. Got that knee injury at Magic Weekend. Didn't play well against Wakefield. Was okay against Warrington, but he looked good. He looked good at the weekend. That's big for them.
And Willie Peters as well, the man who's holding all of this together. What a job he's done, Leon.
I think he gets under talks. What a job he's done. He's absolutely transformed that club and that team now into a dominant Super League club, which has not been easy. It's not been easy to break the stranglehold of Saints, Wigan, Warrington, Leeds, Bradford not there anymore. But to emerge now as probably the top two teams in Super League over a 2 or 3 year period has taken some doing, because that club's not been anywhere near top of Super League or the top end of the table for a very, very long time. And he's come over, he's made changes, he's readjusted, made signings. It's similar to what Maguire did at Wigan when he first came over right back in the day. They're disciplined, they've got a game plan that suits them, they're structured, they're aggressive, they're dominant, they're patient, you can tell they're well organised, they've got a good structure in how they play, they can go to the edges with Lewis, if they want to come back through the middle through Minchella, they know what they're doing, they always get to last players, always kick to boxes in the corners, they'll strangle you, wait for you to make an error, don't let teams out of their half, they attack you with their defence. That's all, that's in their DNA. And he's brought that into him. So the job he's done has been unbelievable.
Yeah, it certainly has. And you mentioned there Michael Maguire. We are, of course, this time of the year where the big games have been played, the trophies have been handed out. I just want to quickly recognise, obviously, Toulouse's efforts in their championship grand final win, 10 points to 8 over a fairly dominant, well, in fact, not a fairly dominant, a totally dominant York side. Congratulations to Toulouse. The Wigan Warriors, of course, the women's team beating St Helens, and of course to the Brisbane Broncos. What a game that was. Oh. You mentioned Michael Maguire. That for me that was probably one of the best games I've ever watched.
Most entertaining. I think it's one of the most entertaining games I've ever watched, without a shadow of a doubt. Do you know what I thought was interesting, Carl? Michael Maguire is credited for almost making Super League less entertaining with the style of rugby he brought over with Wigan in 2010 with the wrestle. And yet you watch that Brisbane team and it was so good to watch as a team, complete opposite to what you think of that Maguire-Wigan side. And I just wonder, is the game evolving back to a more attack-dominated sport? Because off the back of what we saw in that game, it was just a points fest. I was watching going, they can't defend.
Well, just to jump in on that, because Leon, you played in that Saints team where the old mentality was whatever you score, I'll outscore you by. Is that something you'd like to see in the game? Because that final, for me, I talked about Bevan French bums off seats. Those games are where you can't sit in your chair still, can you? Because of the entertainment, the ebbing and flowing of the outcome of the game. Look, you're an attacking player, no doubt about it. Would you love to see, Rugby League, Super League back with an attacking mindset, focus rather than defence?
I think it always goes in cycles, in my opinion. You get the ruck gets slower and slower and slower, and then some seasons they'll speed it up and there'll be change of rules and change of substitutes, how many players are allowed to make subs. And, the way if you look at teams now in the NRL, there's no big boppers. Back in my day, you might have Big Joe Vanganar or Paul Anderson and Barry McDermott and Terry O'Connor. The body types now with these forwards, they're all thin athletes, not thin, sorry, just muscular athletes and tall, 6'4", 6'5".
Well, it'd be very hard to differentiate a winger to a prop now, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You know, look at Ryan Hall. You know, so yeah, go on.
So that lends towards a game being fast, dynamic. The amount of subs, you're not allowed to make as many subs. So, you know, the game has evolved. It's got faster compared to 15 years ago when Maguire was over in Super League. The game evolves, it gets faster, athletes develop, they get faster, stronger, quicker, fitter. So yeah, you want to see the game played in the right way, but there's always a method that coaches find that wins your games. And most of the time that's not open, free-flowing rugby. It's disciplined, structured, end of sets, get to positions. So that will always outweigh the open, attractive rugby because in the end that formula works.
Yeah. What I found interesting with that game, the glaring difference between Super League and NRL with the way the ruck was managed. It was so much quicker. The ruck speed was rapid. And Super League this year for me has been painful to watch at times with the rucks. It's so messy. The referee's having to stop the game to untangle players. There's always players left in the ruck.
I think it's hard to compare though. I mean, the pre-season that those boys do, the amount of time they have off, the actual athlete, if you look at NRL, that they have, the wingers, the centres, the prime time athletes, and it lends towards a quicker game, a faster ruck. And so it's hard to compare to what we've got over here, where it's a little bit of a different competition. So you're watching the prime athlete over there in the NRL, so you're going to see a different speed.
So moving on to this week's big dance, of course, the grand final, Saturday night, Hull KR v Wigan. Leon, it takes a special kind of person to win 4 grand finals, so I'm told. Leon, it could have been 9. It could have had 9 rings.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've won 4, but I lost 5, so I don't know how special I am really. But you talk about the wins and you love the wins and you remember them. But for me, I always remember the losses. And the first one, I was 18. It was my 18th birthday. We were playing 9th of October, 1999, and we played against St Helens for Bradford, and we were clear favourites. And we'd played them 2 weeks before, and we smashed them at home. Odsal, 40-odd points. And we were expected to win that game, and I think it was that controversial one where they said that Mick Withers touched the ball.
Oh, yeah.
Which he didn't,
yeah.
Which should have been, I would have scored a try.
Sounds like you've moved on from
birthday. Don't let us sound bitter. So that would have been nice for the one that one. But yeah, it's what happens in its life. To get to play 9 grand finals is unbelievable. To lose as many as they did, I'm the kind of player that towards the back end of my career that I would have been expected to make more contributions in the games that we lost. And then, I take full responsibility for that, I was expected to be that kind of Bevan French, that X-factor player to find those moments, to come up with something to win you the big games, and I didn't. So, I've got to take responsibility for the games that we lost as well, which I do. But in the games that we won, I enjoyed them. There were some special moments with some special teams, some special players, and it's something that you can look back in this part in my life now and feel proud that nobody can ever take those wins away, those rings away, and it's nice.
Yeah, proud you should be, mate. At the end of the day, you've been there, done it. You've seen both sides of it, and you've come out on top 4 times. Just in terms of seeing it through a halfback's eyes, tell our viewers how a grand final's won.
So it's about patience. You can get caught up in the big occasion, the noise, the lights, basically if you lose this game, if you win this game, you're known as the champions, and that's all you want to be as a player. You want to be known as the champions. But it's not going away from what you're good at. It's not going away from your game plan. It's not trying to win the game in the first 15 minutes. It's realising if you're behind on the clock that you don't need to force it. I mean, playing in so many games where you're in a grand final and there's still 25 minutes to go and it becomes frantic and you start playing the game like you're in the last 2 minutes. If you're watching RL, they take it to the last play, the last second. Reece Walsh makes that tackle on the last play, the last minute of the game. Mm-hmm. You don't need to start panicking 15 minutes out, stick to the process, put it in the corner, stay patient. Still, you don't need to try and find a miracle play. And I think that's sometimes lost in big games with players that probably don't have the big game experience. We're lucky that we're going to see 2 teams that have got plenty of big game experience over the last 2 or 3 years. They've both played in Challenge Cup finals. They've both played in grand finals. So it takes winning those big games like Hull KR did in the Challenge Cup, which they probably could have lost. to understand how to win the big games, to stay patient. They took that to the last 2 minutes before a kick play to come up with a bit of a look. They stuck to the process and they won the game. And it's not trying to force it. It wasn't trying to find a big silly offload around a flick pass or a chip over. They just stuck to the process and learning and understanding that is something you can't buy, that experience.
I just want to pick up on something you mentioned there in that, Leon. You mentioned about process, kick to the corner, don't play the clock, don't play the occasion. We saw last year in the grand final, Harry Smith's boot pretty much just suffocated Hull KR. Harry Smith, no doubt, will look to replicate that exact game plan again. Leon, I just want to just ask you, Hull KR, they've now got 2 out of 3 trophies in the bag this season. Are they a different beast? And what do you think that they need to do this time to make sure that what happened 12 months ago doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you're saying, and I would agree with what Matt says as well about just that one moment, having French and Field with 2 unbelievable players. You've got 12 months more experience for Michael Lewis, who again had an unbelievable season. If he gets Man of Steel, then it'll be richly deserved. So it's just, there's not much in it for me. There's not much in it. If they play their normal strangle game with Mincello through the middle, both half-backs left and right, the wingers carrying the ball and attacking you in their defence where their line speeds, Maria Hargreaves, aggressive in your face, elbows, knees, horns, testicles, as Brian Noble used to say to us back in there. But it's a real 50-50 game. I don't think you can really say there's any real favourites. I think it'll go to the wire. I think the difference will be, like Matt says, an X-factor player, maybe Field French, Michael Lewis. Maybe Michael Lewis has one of those moments this time out. Maybe he finds, maybe Amor has a little bit of a space, and that moment will come in the game at some point, and it just goes on which player can capitalise on it. Well,
just from my own experience, I always felt that it's about everybody nailing their job and don't step out of the realms of, if you're in there for a specific role, don't try and become a mad offloader. Don't try and grab the headline. Don't try and do something that you would never normally not do. And I think grand finals for me are always won on winning the small moments. A loose ball on the floor, Leon, your first there, a kick pressure, stuff that really whilst it doesn't probably get noticed, it helps add colour to the overall picture at the very, very end. So what a grand final it promises to be. We'll, of course, dive into that a little bit more during the week in our prediction show. Make sure that you tune into that. And as always, if you've got anything that you want to let us know about in the comments, please do so. We'd love to hear from you all. Right, so grand final, that's that for now. Just before we move on to the Ashes, because we have to talk about it, we've got a Great Britain legend with us. So, Matt, I just wanted to ask you, look, after this weekend, season's over of Super League, give us your highlight and your low light in 2025.
It's difficult because I'm probably looking at it from a work perspective.
Well, do that, mate. That's what you're here for. You're here for the journalistic point of view.
Well, you know what? The two things that immediately spring to mind are both the same week, and it was Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the high, clearly the high, and yet it was also the low in that it was when the Salford players didn't get paid for the first time, and I remember being so frustrated with the sport and Salford that I was in Vegas for what I thought was the biggest game that maybe in regular Super League history. Take out your grand finals and stuff, and we're talking about Salford, and yet Vegas was still incredible and one of the best experiences I've ever had from a rugby league perspective. That immediately springs to mind as both the high and the low. I mean, the low generally is just the Salford story, right? But the high would be Vegas. That, for me, was unlike anything I've ever come across in my life.
Okay, Leon, I think, I don't think we'll go over that ground of a low point. I think it's pretty obvious where the lowest part of our game come in 2025. But from a highlight perspective, for you as an ex-player, now sitting sort of, in the stands, watching the game on as a fan, what's been your highlight in 2025?
Can I be really honest?
Yep, of course you can.
I don't watch a whole heap of rugby, and most of my rugby that I watch is my son and my youngest son, who plays amateur rugby and amateur football. So for me, my highlight would be we went to Catalan as a family, and my son played there. We lived there for 3 years. Back in 2012 or 2011, we went as a family. Me and my wife and two kids at the time. And going back to Catalan, seeing Bernard Gauche, the chairman, seeing all the old French team and watching Hull FC play against Catalan Dragons, son scoring a couple of world tries and having an unbelievable time, getting treated really well by Bernard and the club. For me, that was my highlight of the year. I know it's personal, but that's my honest truth.
No, nice as well to share that as well. Look, we'd love to hear your highlights as well at home. Please do comment and let us know. Look, I think it's I completely agree with you, Matt, to be honest. I was thinking Vegas before I asked you the question, and I was thinking Salford as well. So, Vegas, of course, you were out there. I was sat at home watching it. So hopefully you guys at home can keep driving our numbers up and get the powers that be at All Out Rugby League to send us over to Vegas in 2026.
There's a lot of people squirming in the in control room at the minute.
So the grand final will bring the curtain down on season 2025. Who will be crowned winner this Saturday? Well, that all remains to be seen. But once the Super League season is done and dusted, we know that one of the most anticipated series in the world of rugby league is back. England are taking on Australia, and it doesn't get bigger than this. The toughest rivalry in our sport, back where it belongs. Of course, Everton's ground is already sold out. Headingley for Game 3 is already sold out. So your only chance to see it live is, of course, at Wembley Stadium on Saturday, the 25th of October. Ashes Rugby League at Wembley. You do not want to miss this. Adult tickets start from just £20. Search Rugby League Ashes. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the link in the description to get yours right now. Booking fees, of course, apply. Right, so the Ashes, Leon. We're just gonna dive straight into it. Kevin Walters has released his Australian squad. I think it's got 6 or 7 debutants. One of those being Reece Walsh. I mean, he is right now the hottest property in the game.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for me, we touched on it before, that grand final performance. He had absolutely everything. Probably the best GF performance by one single player, in my opinion. He's got everything, and he can run, he can kick, he can tackle, he can pass. There's not one area of his game that he can't do. He can defend, he can try savers. With that ball when he just come off the ruck and just stepped and just interjected himself into the game, and off on fullback, bam, under sticks, in a time that your team really needs you. He's star quality, and I'm a really tight Yorkshireman, but I'd pay to see him play.
Well, hey, make sure Leon's going to pay. Make sure you get your tickets.
Does he get in the team?
Reece Walsh?
Yeah.
Yes, he has to. Come on.
There's no Latrell,
no.
There's Dylan Edwards.
There's no Latrell, is there?
No, I think
Dylan Edwards has been the Aussie.
Well, yeah, tough call. It just shows that
based on what I saw on Sunday, Reece Walsh absolutely plays.
Yeah.
But I go back to the rucks, right? If we play the English way, which Christian Wolf moaned about with the Tonga when Tonga were over,
true.
The slow rucks.
Is it suited more
to Edwards?
Yeah. Well, Reece Walsh, Matt, right now, bigger than Nathan Cleary or not?
Right here, right now, based on that performance. I mean, he was a joke, wasn't he?
I don't think you can compare the two.
You can't.
You can't compare the two. It's two totally different positions, and they're both superstar players that are right at the peaks of their powers, right at the top of their games, and let's just enjoy watching them both because they're unbelievable.
This is why it's so exciting, isn't it? This series, it's just got class all over, hasn't it? If you're ever going to go and watch England v Australia this autumn, is you have to be there. Again, make sure you head over to Rugby League Ashes to grab those tickets. Leon, of course, 2006, you've been a part of a Great Britain side that's beaten the Australians. What does it take to do that? I asked you about a grand final. This is a different level, right?
Oh, it's a completely different level, yeah. I was so fortunate to play in an era and a team full of really talented and tough men, like Adrian Morley, Jamie Peacock, Gareth Ellis. The list goes on. We had a really good pack, and they're called a test match for a reason, aren't they? They test you to the highest level, and Australians are renowned for being able to grind and stay with it the full game, no matter what. You can feel as like you can have the Aussies on the edge, and they just stick with it, and they'll play right to the very last play of the game. They've got world-class athletes and players in every single position. It's the toughest test you'll ever come across, but it's almost that's what you're working towards in your career, is those games there. You get to be at your peak as a player. You're playing against players in their peak years, and let's see what happens. So yeah, it's what you want to do as a player is playing those big games.
Well, take us. Sorry, Matt.
I was just going to say, and you just wind them up before the game.
Yeah, well, I learned that lesson as well. Yeah, and don't say anything controversial to put more spotlight on yourself, like I learned to do. So yeah, it's all fun, isn't it? I mean, the Aussies like giving us, those Aussies like ripping the English, the pommy this and pommy that, and you say one little thing back and they don't like it. So, yeah.
Well, it was the quote, wasn't it? You'd rather be in Blackpool than Bondi, that landed you in hot water with the press out there.
Sent them crazy. They went mental. Channel 9 News were chasing me down front and back pages of Old Trafford. They're chasing us to training, chasing us on the beach.
What was that like, handling that and then having to go and play? Because I was just going to go. Talk us through that first. I'm assuming, Leon, that you'd never had that kind of attention in your career before.
It was pre-mobile day, so it wasn't like the internet. 2006, so people didn't really have mobile phones. The internet wasn't really a thing. So I thought this little bit of a piece I was saying were just going to be for back home. But the Aussies found a way of getting it, and they've been ripping us all week. They've been talking about the pommies. They're not full-time players. They're going to get beat by 60, and the part-time players and the rubbish. And we just got a good hammering, and you're not used to it, are you really? But over here, we're not used to being under so much scrutiny. So I just said, wind them up a little bit. And next thing you know, it was national press, and it had pictures of Bondi and then pictures of Bradford, where I'm from, the Bradford riots, cars on fire, in this big Bradford riots back in there. And so I couldn't have put myself on myself really under any more pressure than what I did. But then to beat them on their own ground in Sydney was, I don't know, just not justified it, but it just made it sweet, didn't it? If I'd lost it, it might have been a bit of a different story. But to get the win, it kind of blew over what I'd said, and it were probably the biggest game that I ever won in my career.
Well, what were your memories from that night, of course, because 23-12 it ends up being Gareth Rayner, of course, scores that try there that solidifies that win. What's your memories from that night, Leon?
Well, there was so many memories, so many moments. Obviously, Stu Fielding got that punch from Willie Mason. JP ran in and had a bit of a punch on, which is Test rugby. That's what you want to see. Then a little bit after that, Long, he got taken out. That was worse for me. The elbow from Willie Mays, Big Willie, took him out, but Longy got up and got on with it. And Longy really had his best performance in a Great Britain shirt, an international game that he'd ever had. He pulled the strings. He'd been the same for Saints that year. I'd played 6 and 7, and we'd won it for Saints in that year, 2006. And he had that same performance on an international level. Pulled the strings, kicking game, set well up on the inside for a try that was really important. Lee Gilmore scoring under the sticks on a bit of a back on the inside play, and we managed to stick on in there. And there were a young Greg Inglis, where I think he was on the wing. Lockyer was playing. I think Hornby was at half back. It was just one of those nights that things went our way. We toughed it out. We stayed. We played for each other. And we managed to get the win, so special night. Yeah,
obviously some huge names there. You're just reading them out, and you're almost sat back thinking, "Wow, that really was a period in time of fantastic players on both teams." Of course, Leon, you were playing with the likes of Sean Long, Paul Deakin, Rob Burrow, Danny Maguire, all of who could have easily put their hand up to play halfback. Lee Breers, of course. We look ahead to now. And the conundrum that, we've spoke about it many times here on Bat 10 about who is going to play 6 and 7 in this current crop of players. Sorry, George Williams, we've got there. Mikey Lewis, Jake Connor, Harry Smith, of course. Where do you see it all fitting?
I think you need halfbacks that complement each other. I think George Williams will definitely play, and I think Mikey will probably play, in my opinion. But then
are they not both similar though?
Yeah,
they're both runners, aren't they?
They are pretty much runners. Yeah, then you might play Harry Smith as a 7 that can control. His kicking game is really important, but yeah, it's a good headache to have, isn't it? It's you need halfbacks to be able to complement each other. In my era, it was not as much left and right. It was more 7 organising, 6 sweeping both sides of the field. Whereas nowadays, it's very much a left and a right side. It's more structured attacking play. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see. At international level, you need somebody that can put the ball kicking wise into the right positions. Field positions so vitally important. But then you also need somebody with a bit of X factor like a Mikey Lewis who can take the line on and find them moments that we talk about. So it's a balancing act, and it's a good headache to have.
So Kevin Walters there, of course, he's put out his squad. Matt, we'll come to you on England and who or who may not be in the squad or who you may think be in the squad. But just throwing some muck against the wall here, guys. There's some noticeable absentees in that. Max King, of course, the Canterbury Bulldogs forward. He expressed his interest in playing for England potentially. Of course, he's had a fantastic season in 25, played New South Wales, so he would, of course, jeopardise that if he did come and play for England. Brimson as well, another name. Matt, do you see them two maybe featuring, or?
I think so. We spoke to Sean Wayne, we had a media briefing. We've had two recently. One was at the Worsley Marriott where Max King was brought up, and he made it quite clear Max King won't be in his team. I think, if I recall, he mentioned something about him singing the national anthem at the State of Origin. He's like, he wants to play for England. So I think rule him out. I think AJ Brimson will be in the squad.
Right.
I think AJ Brimson will be. So Sean Wayne names his squad next Monday. I think AJ Brimson will be in it.
Leon, what's your take on this? Australians who many people or cynical people may look and go, well, if he'd have got the nod for Australia, would he be so passionate about coming to play? Where do you sit with that? We saw it a lot, haven't we, in recent years? You know, Victor Radley, of course, he'd been a part of the England squad. Where do you see fit with? How does it sit with you, rather?
Personally, I mean, yeah, it's an hard one because I don't want to sound too old school, but I'd say the general public would rather have a team full of full English people that want to play for England first, that, you know, are passionate about the country and that have, you know, that have got some, I don't know, it's hard to put into words. But, you know, if you've lived here through residency or you've got your mother and, you know, like Victor Radley obviously his dad's English. He feels a big part of England and I think it was the right call. But I think it's got to be a bit of a fine line between people that, you know, maybe only see it as the second option. But if they've got a right through birth to play here, then so be it.
Well, look, that's coming from myself, an Englishman playing for Ireland, so I do echo that. You know, I did qualify, rightly so, to be able to represent Ireland. So, look, you know, thanks very much for your time, guys. Obviously, we say it each and every week. There's so much more we could get through. Plenty to talk about this week, given all of those big games and how they've unfolded. But time has beaten us once again. For those watching at home on a mobile phone or a tablet, please don't forget when you've let us know your comments, swipe left at that comment section to reveal that hype button. Click that hype button and help us reach wider audiences. Don't forget also, as we ask you each and every week, to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you do not miss anything when it comes to the latest news and stories from here at Back 10 and across all our Rugby League other pages as well. Thanks to Leon, thanks to Matt, and thanks to you all for listening and watching at home. Enjoy the grand final. Bye for now.